The world is witnessing in Gaza an assault that is unprecedented in speed and severity, violating the most basic precepts of the right to life and the survival of a population. The international community's unwillingness to hold Israel accountable for its policies and practices, and its failure to ensure the immediate, unconditional and total withdrawal of Israeli troops and an immediate end to Israel occupation and apartheid in Palestine, including Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, emboldens Israel to cross a further threshold, namely to commit the crime of crimes, genocide. Mr. President, distinguished members of the court, it is now my honor to request you to invite Advocate Andrew Stemmet to the bar to submit South Africa's further observations on the questions referred to the court by the UN General Assembly. Thank you.
Naeem Jeenah is an executive director at Afro-Middle East Centre. He joins us now from Johannesburg. Great to have you on the programme. What do you make of what was said there by South Africa's representative to the Netherlands? And he, of course, was looking at this from the lens of the word apartheid. He said many things. The Palestinian cause resonates strongly with South Africa. And, of course, we know that this case is, though, separate to the case that was filed by South Africa at the ICJ.
In a sense, what Ambassador Madonsela was saying is not new for South Africans. And South Africans have seen apartheid, as he himself said, for decades in the Palestinian context, both for Palestinians living within Israel itself, as well as for those living in the occupied territory. So he's re-articulating what has been said already by people like Desmond Tutu and various anti-apartheid activists of the past. The South African position around apartheid, Israeli apartheid, as well as the South African position on occupation of the Palestinian territory, I think is well known. South Africa regards the occupation now as being illegal as well.
Indeed, and we know that this is non-binding. Whatever decision is made by this after this week by the ICJ, but just again here right now, the visual, the optics of having South Africa representing such strong words there for the Palestinians. How important is this?
Well, certainly for the masses of people around the world who for the past almost 5 months have been taking to the streets. These words are very important. They're very symbolic coming from South Africa. But from a broader perspective, even though the advisory opinion that the ICJ will hand down, and let's assume that it upholds the complaint that the occupation is illegal, even if it hands down an advisory opinion like that, the opinion might not be binding, but it does form part of international law, which means that the number of states that have come out, particularly in the past few months, against Israel's genocide, against Israel's occupation, the vast majority of the 52 that will be presenting this week that support the argument that Israel's occupation is illegal, that the advisory opinion forms part of international law means they then are able to give it legal effect in their own context, whether that means how they address their relations with Israel or particular Israeli politicians, etc. So from a legal enforceability perspective, it's not binding, but it has that effect.
Indeed. And just thinking right now, Naeem, about the fact that the US has, for the first time, proposed a draft UN Security Council resolution calling for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. Do you think, again, seeing so many countries pushing there for Palestinian, let's call it the word justice, the correct word, the legality of Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories, and what we saw, the case brought by South Africa, what bearing do you think this has on the US?
Well, I think that the US, firstly, the fact that the US is now using the word ceasefire, even if it's describing it as temporary, is somewhat significant. But let's be clear, the US is putting forward this proposal in a sense, in opposition to what the Algerians want to put forward, which would call on the Security Council to enforce the ICJ's provisional measures that it issued in the genocide issue. So it's a way that the US is trying to kind of temper what comes out of the Security Council, to moderate it, so that the effect on Israel is not as harsh as it could be. So there is that, but it is significant that the US is using the word ceasefire. I think that there are many in the American administration that very strongly feel that there needs to be a ceasefire, that Israel's actions do constitute genocide and they need to stop. But certainly the American president is the main bulwark against that kind of a mood.
Indeed, and we still need to see if that draft resolution will be put to a vote. Fantastic to get your analysis, Naeem. Thank you so much, Naeem Jeenah, Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Centre, joining us from Johannesburg. And we've just been seeing there on our screens the South Africa representative, Vusimuzi Mandosela, South Africa's ambassador to the Netherlands, giving his oral arguments there on day 2 of at The Hague of the International Court of Justice, holding its second day of hearings into the legality of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the occupied West Bank.